Rolling around at the speed of sound. Got places to go. Gotta follow my rainbow.
Should we open by singing an iconic theme from one of Spielberg's movies?
Yeah, but
We
each
haven't
of
done a
us has
singing
to
one in a
choose
bit.
What if we
one should we
each
do?
do a different one?
Yeah,
Cool.
because he has
okay.
so many.
Yeah, he has a lot.
Okay, I want to do E.T.
I want to do Jaws.
I'll do
What?
Jurassic.
Okay.
No, wait, I'll do Indiana Jones.
There you
Okay,
go.
I'll do
That's-
Jaws then.
You're gonna do
Wait,
okay. Fine.
but you're gonna change it. No, I'll do Jurassic Park. No, just kidding. No, just kidding. I'll do Indiana Jones. I don't
All right, I'll do Jaws.
Okay, and I'll do E.T. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Ouch.
That might be the most disorienting opening we've ever had. Oh, it's still going.
Yeah, no, that's it.
That was hard for me to do.
All right, everyone.
yeah.
Let's do a game. You're sticking a hot iron into E.T.'s chest. Do your impression. Okay, Brandon. Mine's. Yeah, welcome back to Stacked episode 95. We're back to recording normal
Regular.
episodes of the show. Brandon is back.
Yeah, I am.
You're here. Hello.
I can defend myself now.
Is there anything you'd like to defend yourself from
Well-
all the things we claimed against you last episode?
I was intoxicated for the second, and it was the second time I'd ever watched The Big Lebowski. So I needed sustenance in my system, hence why I was making the pizza. I was half paying attention to the movie, but I figured that goes
Half.
along. That goes along with the dude's mentality, dude.
No. You still don't like it.
Yeah, and I still don't
The
like
dude
it.
doesn't constantly complain about things
Yeah, he does,
in the
man.
movie.
He complains about his rug getting pissed on for the
That's just one thing.
whole movie. But that's my rebuttal is you messed up some things in terms of facts, and I was fact checking you live on the podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Alright, tell me these facts that we messed up.
No.
Why? So
We don't have
didn't-
time
so
for
we're-
that.
So we were good.
Oh, okay,
So we got
sure.
everything right.
The audience will know. They'll know. It's mostly facts about certain things.
About what things? You're just saying
You'll-
things. It means nothing. So we were right about everything.
Well, I'll let the audience decide where you were wrong.
What? You're just okay. You're gaslighting. You're making things up.
I am
Alright,
not
good to
actually,
know.
but they'll see. I was gonna do it in the comment section below, but as you see, they were flagging my comments as terrorism. So
because they were wrong. So that just
Okay, yeah, okay, that's fine. Mhm.
Cool. All right. Someone is coping a little bit, but that's fine because we're gonna continue up the episode with him now. All right. So we're doing Spielberg movies. This is the first time we have ever done an episode specifically on a person and their filmography. This is really exciting for me. This is what I envisioned the show to get to at one point. You know, with the last 5 episodes of this this form, this is how I wanted this show to be. Is we pick an artist, a director, an actor, a cinematographer, an editor, a sound designer, a production designer, and we break down the 3 most essential works of art to encapsulate their entire career. That intrigues me, and I think we're gonna have a fun time hashing out which 3, we're gonna have, represent Steven Spielberg and his 50+ year filmography, which is crazy. It's been around for a fucking long time, you know?
He started making movies in his 20s, like when our ages. That's crazy. Most
Yeah.
filmmakers don't. Like, if you look at most starts of filmmakers' career, it happens in their late 30s or mid 40s, I feel like.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. But this dude is literally, if you've seen the Fabelmans, which You probably haven't, because we were talking about the Spielberg movies because the Fabelmans release is this coming week. So I think on the 23rd, Wednesday the 23rd, you'll be able to go out into the theaters this Thanksgiving and see, Steven Spielberg talk
Paul
about
Dano.
his growing up and how his father was Paul Dano, his daddy, as some would say. But yeah, Chris and I have seen the movie because, we're LA elitists. We get to go to movies early. Brandon, just, what can we say about Brandon La Palma?
I could have said it. I could have seen it too.
Why didn't you?
Because I had to date.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
What's rule number 1 at Stacked, guys?
My woman
Movies
takes
before
precedence.
women.
No.
Movies first, women
That's
second.
what all of our fans say. They say
I'm
movies
telling your
before
girlfriends.
women.
I'm telling your guys' girlfriends.
If it was for the Fabelmans, she would agree, Brandon.
She also went with you. But
That's true. She did go with me. Because we were Fabelmaxing. We were Fabelmogging at the Fabelmans.
I could have gone.
We were Fable cells. Fabelmogging at the Fabelmans.
They go pogging.
We were pogging. We were soy facing and pointing at the screen whenever Paul Dano went, oh. But yeah, guys, Steven Spielberg. Probably, he's the director whose films I've probably seen the most of. I think I've seen around 31 of his movies. Brandon, you've seen all of them. No, you haven't seen all of them, all but one. Haha, loser. Chris, you've probably seen quite a few as well.
I've seen quite a few, but there's definitely some good number of blind spots here and there.
Well, hopefully, Brandon and I will illuminate upon those blind spots this episode. But I want to ask you guys, what was your strategy for encapsulating this dude's career? Brandon, what was your strat?
I wanted to pick my favorite movies that don't often get talked about from Spielberg, or if they are talked about, I wanted to highlight them because, in all honesty, if you've looked at our Stacked podcast history, we haven't really talked about a lot of Spielberg movies, which is really surprising, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a handful, but he is one of the most prolific filmmakers of all time. I hesitate to say best because I think he does have his fair amount of stinkers. I think a quarter of his filmography is quite mid or worse. But the fact that he has 20 good films is an achievement of itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. So, what about you, Chris?
Yeah, for me, my process was just kind of I wanted to create a selection of variety from his filmography and ones that span the eras of his time as a filmmaker. The only way I can really describe it is it's quite an eclectic selection, which I think is actually really representative of Spielberg because the guy has dabbled in so many genres. Yeah. So I wanted to do something that kind of encapsulates a little bit of everything. So that's kind of how I approached it.
I think there's 3 eras to Spielberg. Someone could argue 4. But I think the 70s to early 80s is a specific kind of Spielberg, where, he's, I personally think that's when he's the most imaginative, which I'm not saying the rest of his films are like that, which I'm not saying that puts those films above those. It's just most of his ideas during that time, I feel are the most imaginative. And then there's the late 80s and 90s, where I feel he's really nailing down his voice and making some really intense films, some profound films, some great blockbusters, And then the third era is sort of the 21st century digital Spielberg, where he's starting to, you can tell I feel Spielberg, he has a distinct, digital filmmaking was really a hurdle with him when it came to lighting. And you can see him sort of try to work with that in the beginning of the 21st century. and he got to a lot more personal projects, I feel. A lot more historical projects. I don't know. You can kind of just see his taste got older as he got older as well in the 21st century. You know what I mean?
I guess I can see that, yeah.
Like, I don't think 70s Spielberg would have made War Horse, you know what I mean? Like, or Bridge of Spies. I don't know.
It may have been better if he made those back then, because those aren't very good movies.
Yeah. So those probably won't appear on our stack, so I just shout them up. One film I will shout out that would have absolutely have been on my stack, and I would have fought to have it on the final stack, but it's already been used for a final stack, is E.T.
Yeah,
that's like one of the
E.T.
only Spielberg movies we've talked about and put on a final stack on this show. Other films are Ready Player One, so you won't hear that, and I wouldn't think that deserves a final stack anyways.
Yeah.
And then if you believe in the theories, Poltergeist.
I believe.
You believe? I somewhat believe too.
It just feels like a Spielberg movie. It doesn't feel like a Tobe Hooper movie.
Yeah, it is way more E.T. than Texas
Chainsaw.
So I subscribe to that theory, and I put Poltergeist in my Spielberg rankings. I don't know if anyone will get mad at that. I don't care. But yeah, I just picked films from those three eras for my stack. I'm gonna have a wild card. There's a wild card pick in this stack that I don't think anyone will see coming.
No, that's actually a rarity, because mine is the most straight Spielberg you'll ever see.
Yeah. Okay.
Mine's pretty straight.
I feel like all of mine, in a sense, are wild cards.
I have a guaranteed double stack pick, which I don't care because I feel like this film needs to be talked about no matter what. Then I have a wild card, and then I have one that I know you two won't pick, but
okay,
we'll get to it. So let's get to it. But before that, of course, let's run down the rules of the show. Once a week, we set a topic or theme and go our own separate ways to construct our own 3-film stack. Then after a week, we come back here on the podcast and share our own stacks, one film at a time. Then at the end of the show, we'll mix and match our 9 films, make the ultimate decision what quintessential 3-film stack we are checking out of this hypothetical video store. Brandon, what's your first Spielberg movie, bud?
I'm going to talk about the only film ever made. I'm picking 2004's The Terminal.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No.
Double stack. That was my five Are you fucking kidding me? Why the hell are you picking the term? That was my bit. You stole my bit. You motherfucker.
It's not a bit.
Well, looks like Terminal just got locked in for final stack.
Terminal. No. Is it too late to change? Is it too late to change?
Nope.
I don't want the Terminal anymore.
We're going with it. All right. Tell me about. Okay, guys, I want to hear it, because this movie's been sitting on my watch list. I don't really know what this movie's about.
The Terminal is in the news.
This is timely too, because the guy who the Terminal was based on just died. Like, he died yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
Brandon, do you want to inform Chris what the Terminal is about?
Yeah. So the Terminal is about a Eastern European man who is fleeing his country, and during that time when he's fleeing his country, he travels to the United States and gets stuck in the airport because as soon as he lands in the U.S., his immigration status as a refugee is kind of in question. So he's basically stuck at the airport and has to figure out a way to survive off only airport food, airport fares, living inside the terminal. Hence the name. And this movie is extremely wholesome. It's a movie that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's not trying to say something massive. It's just telling people to be more kind, and it's very, very nice and sweet. But the reason why I chose it, believe it or not, is because it was like a big post 9/11 movie. Like, in how it depicted the immigration and security changes that the US and other Western countries overwent when 9/11 happened. And I think that's extremely fascinating because Spielberg has a 9/11 trilogy with Munich, this, and War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
And this is the lightest of the three. And so it's a definitely a lighter contrast, which I honestly really appreciate when it comes to tackling these sort of changes. But it doesn't like excuse the US like making their laws and regulations more strict. It actually questions it in a very interesting way. And of course, you've got a nice romance there. So I won't spoil the rest, but it's a great movie, or a good movie that it's guilty. It's a guilty great movie.
So yeah, I wanted to check this movie out when we were flying back from Oregon. I was I think I was like debating between this movie and another movie to watch on my flight, but I ended up just passing out during my flight, so I didn't watch anything. But this was up there, so eventually I do kind of feel like I want to watch this movie while I'm on a plane for some reason. Maybe it's because it's the terminal. I don't know.
I think as an immigrant, you'd really connect to this.
Would I gel with this?
Yeah, I would think you would.
Okay. All right, I'll check it out sometime. Ethan, what made you pick this one?
So that's funny because I actually watched this for the first time on our Oregon trip.
Oh, get out!
I watched it for the first time when I was dog sitting my sister's puppy.
Something about Oregon, man.
Yeah, and there was just nothing for me to do, so I looked on at Netflix and I was like, "Oh, there's the terminal. I'll watch it." You know, because Joey and Brandon always had this joke that it was the only movie ever. And turns out they're right. It is the only movie ever. I 100% agree with what Brandon said. I think mapping out his, Spielberg is one of the few directors who, you could tell 9/11 really affected him personally.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to display his emotions for this big event through his films, So it started with, I think, is this the one that started it? Because The Terminal came out 2004, War of the Worlds came out 2005. When did Munich come out?
I think that was 2006 or 2005 as well. Because dude's known for dropping two films a year.
Dude can drop 2 movies in 1 year. I think it was also 2005. That's starting to ring a bell for me.
Yeah.
So this is the one that kicked it off, which doesn't really make much sense because I feel like he would have ended with the lighter one.
Yeah. Unless you count Catch Me If You Can, which is all about but that's set in the past mostly. It just has to do with traveling and flying and stuff like that. But I don't count it. I
think the other 3 are more politically leaning towards post 9/11, reactionary 9/11 cinema. But it's such an optimistic film about, it doesn't matter which borders you're from, you're able to connect with other people,
Mm-hmm.
Just the friends that he makes at the airport, the love story that he has, and the love story, I feel like it's a pretty realistic love story, It's not a highly I don't want to spoil anything that happens in the movie, but I was just surprised about how mature and realistic the love story was, for someone like Spielberg, who is a very cinematically fantastical guy, Tom Hanks is certainly
doing a funny voice.
He does a funny voice, but I would say that is Spielberg's muse is Tom Hanks. It started with Richard Dreyfuss, and then it went on to maybe Harrison Ford. No, he was just in the indie movies. I'm trying to think. I don't know. Just the only I think Tom Hanks has been in the majority of Spielberg's films. He's been in what? 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's the majority of 37. So
I mean,
maybe 8.
The majority, the actor who's been in the most. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, Harrison Ford's also been in 4 Spielberg films, but those are just Indiana Jones movies. Anyways, the dude loves Tom Hanks. Yeah, The Terminal, good movie. It's not one of his greats, but I do think it's the best of his early. It's one of the best of his early 2000s. I didn't want to pick, because I also wanted to pick a post 9/11 movie. I like War of the Worlds more than this movie.
Yes, you do.
I think that's Spielberg's most underrated movie ever. Absolutely. But I wanted to go with something because I feel like that does fall in line with most of Spielberg's other films in his filmography, but like The Terminal also like captures that he's just like sometimes he just has like these whittle wheeled ideas that he just makes these whittle wheeled movies. He makes these little weird movies like The Terminal or like I don't know, BFG, stuff that just comes out of nowhere. I think Ready Player One was also a weird pick for him. That late in his career, we were like, you wouldn't see him make a movie. We never thought he'd make a movie like that ever again. But
no
he did
genre, no genre movies, and then he did it.
Then he did it. He just likes to keep us on our toes, which is what I appreciate about the filmmaker. But yeah, I guess that's one of our most quintessential, Spielberg movies. Which it's. I don't know why I feel weird about it because I was one of the ones who did pick this, and when you do pick a movie, you have to believe that it will make it to the final stack. But now I just feel weird about it, because this was my pick that I didn't think would go on the final stack, but
here we are.
Now it's here. Here we are, and The Terminal is one of the 3 Spielberg movies that you have to watch according to Stacked. So. And that's fine by me, I guess. Maybe
so funny.
I don't know.
That's so funny.
That's so good. Yeah, it's like how like at the AMC back in Orange, like they have those posters of like directors, but that's like the most random.
It's
movies
like
from
why this movie? No one's ever heard of this one. Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember like there was like I think the only one that made sense was Ron Howard's one, which was for Apollo. But but I remember there was like the
Spike Lee was like Mo Better Blues.
Yeah, Mo Better Blues for Spike Lee. I'm like, okay.
All right.
Okay, but cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Coppola's
Chris,
was like Peggy Sue Got Married, not even like The Godfather or something.
Yeah. Chris, get us back on track here with some of Spielberg's more popular movies.
All right, let's go with the quintessential. We're going with Jaws for the first one.
All right. Yep.
Yeah, someone had to pick it. I knew it'd be me because it's obvious. It's so obvious. It's just like it's the one it's probably the most well known, maybe next to Jurassic. And it's okay. God, what is there to say about Jaws? I mean, everybody here if you're listening to this podcast and you're already on episode 95, you probably have already seen Jaws. I'm going to assume that everyone here has seen Jaws at some point. But yeah, Jaws is Spielberg's directorial debut, a huge movie that literally created the term blockbuster. A production that was filled with so many issues, especially with the mechanical shark, but ended up becoming an incredibly influential movie across the world. Everybody in the world knows this movie. My family. I remember growing up in Hong Kong, like I'm not even fucking kidding. I was scared to take a shower because of this movie. Because I was that scared of water. Because
aren't you by the ocean in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I live in a peninsula. It's weird. But yeah, Jaws is a fantastic movie. I was fortunate enough to get to see it in IMAX recently when they did their re-release back in early September of this year. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about Jaws. It's a very well crafted film. I fully believe that it has earned every accolade that it has ever been awarded. It's an incredible look into the beginning of one of like arguably one of the most influential filmmakers to ever live. Yeah, I don't know. Like this movie is like it does take liberties with the original source material. They cut out some things like what's the name of Hopper? Hooper? Is it Hooper? Hooper doesn't have like the affair with Brody's wife that is in the books, and but nonetheless, I actually think this movie works really well. I think it's so well done. Like every film school class will at some point talk about this movie just because it's there. It's always around, and like it's so influential in what it did. It's not like a perfect movie in my eyes, but it's one that I hold with so much endearment because I can see so much love and passion behind this project, and I can only imagine how difficult it was to make this movie. Just because
Yeah.
of hearing all the stories. There's really not much to say about Jaws. Everybody here knows it. We all know it. We all like it at least. Brandon, I'm gonna start with you because you of the three of us, you are the least warm on it, even though you do like this movie.
Mhm.
What do you have to say about? Do you have anything to say about Jaws?
I mean, it's a quintessential film in film history. I have no denying that. Because I have no problem denying that because it is like one of the first major motion pictures to be known as like a blockbuster formally, which led to like what kind of environment we're living in today, where tentpole movies kind of bookend the year and also put it in the middle, with the summer season. So I do recognize its power. As a film, I don't think it's really that scary, meaning I don't think it's aged particularly well, whereas some films from like the 70s and 80s do. They don't like scare me, but like the reputation this one hasn't really affected me in any way. Like when I go swimming in the ocean, I'm not afraid of sharks. But I know I'm in the minority on that.
Yeah.
In terms of like the storytelling, I think actually the best stuff in this movie is tackling corrupt government
With the mayor and all that stuff.
But yeah, with the local government, because that's really interesting to me. I like the political angle
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
it, and the human panic is also really interesting to look at. But like
Mhm.
the stuff with the shark itself and the paranoia of Roy Schneider and Richard Dreyfuss's characters, not really my thing, and that's why I've never really sought out the other Jaws movies, because I'm like, it's a good movie. It has something to say. It's a very unique blockbuster, and I understand its historical importance. But in terms of it being a like great film, I don't really see it. It's just okay at times and good at others. So
I really, 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 really liked this movie. And then I fell in love with this movie all over again when I saw the IMAX re-release in September.
That was cool.
That was like, there's only like 2 times where I've ever felt transported back in time. Like I was like, this is like what it must have felt like seeing this movie in theaters when it came out. The first time was when I saw RoboCop at the Frida, and I'll admit I was high out of my mind. And I just remember walking into the lobby, and the Frida it looks like a pretty old theater, right? Like its bathrooms are pretty old. There's 80s music playing in the lobby, and then I come back into like this little, the Frida's nice, but it's a little grungy,
Yeah.
And it's playing, Paul Verhoeven's RoboCop, and I feel like, wow, I'm looking at everybody. I must have been so weird. I was like standing in the aisles looking at everyone in the movie. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I feel like I'm like, this is like what the energy must have been like in the 80s when this movie first came out. And then when I saw Jaws, the theater was packed. Every seat was filled for Jaws.
Yeah.
I was
same.
so surprised. Every seat was filled. People were bringing their kids to this movie.
I was about to say, kids. I saw kids seeing this movie for the first time, and they were shitting their pants.
They were shitting their pants. There was people talking during the movie. I was like, this to me feels like people are still like in the 70s when megaplexes first came around. Jaws created the blockbuster. People don't know how to act during these kinds of movies yet, So I wasn't like mad because I've seen this movie like 10 times before, So I was like, everyone shut up. I'm trying to watch the movie. The movie I know everything that they're saying, So I was fine. I was like more taking in like the atmosphere. I'm like, there was a couple sitting next to me. The woman didn't speak English. No, the man didn't speak English. So the woman was telling him everything that was happening. And usually I would be really mad at that, but I'm just like, this is so interesting, like she's probably showing him Jaws for the first time. They're like an older couple, and then I could hear kids and adults screaming when stuff would happen in the movie, and I'm like, wow, people still think this movie's scary. That's how well it holds up, It was one of my favorite cinematic experiences. Just so fun, even though if this was any other movie, I think I would have had it. This would have been a nightmare. But for Jaws, like people came through. I just felt like I was like seeing this movie with people who probably never go to the movies, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's crazy because that's why Jaws created the blockbuster, is because this high concept film was able to pull those kinds of people who never thought twice about going to a movie, you know? They came out to go see this. And for some reason this movie just like enamors people like that, which is why it's like such a classic. And which is why I love it even more than I did it like previously. So love Jaws. Good pick, Chris. This had to be talked about. I'm glad it was.
Yeah. At some point, someone had to mention it.
Yeah.
Cool. But that's the first round, guys.
Hell yeah. Yeah, because we double stacked this first round. Brandon, we're back to you with your second pick. Now, don't pick one of my movies or I'm going to fucking slap you.
So I wanted to do a historical pick for Spielberg because I love history.
I'm trembling in my boots.
Because you can't mention historic, like, he's done Amistad, he's done Empire of the Sun, and he's done my second pick. I'm picking 2012's Lincoln.
Okay, good.
Oh,
I know.
God.
I know what you guys thought I was gonna pick, and it was very close to me picking that because I do think that is pretty quintessential. But we haven't talked about this film yet, and I think this is one of the best films Spielberg has ever made. I saw this in theaters when I was 12 or 13, whenever it came out, and it's hard for like a teenager, I feel like, when they're accustomed to watching blockbusters at home or in theaters or animated films to really dip their toes into historical drama. But I love Lincoln. I love Daniel Day-Lewis's performance in this movie. It feels like he is Lincoln, like he's dipped his toes into that method acting water that he so often treads and like becomes the character and the historical figure that is. It's patriotic, but it doesn't shy away from the like disturbing things in Lincoln's life, such as Mary Todd Lincoln's mental lapses, his own battle with like illness, and his own like predications on the future of himself, about himself and his death. And I think it's an extremely interesting movie about trying to convince people to overturn slavery in the South while also keeping the United States together, because that is one of the most tumultuous times in not only American history but world history, I'd say. One of the biggest civil wars ever, one of the most high mass casualty events, and it's just so fascinating to see that unfold. And on the other hands, I think this movie could have been a slog, but if you rewatch it, I'm sure you'd love it. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's too long. Movies shouldn't be longer than 2 hours. It shouldn't be longer than 90 minutes. But he earns it here. And yeah, it's terrific.
Yeah, very cool. I really like Lincoln too. I gave it a 4, and I haven't seen it in a couple of years. But yeah, I like you said, Brandon, Daniel Day-Lewis kills it in here. So I also love Sally Field in here.
Oh, she's so good.
She's fantastic in here. Funnily enough, like these last few weeks, I've actually been diving more back into like my interest in history, and I've been learning about the American. Like I was jumping into the American Revolution and what is this article?
The Civil War.
Civil War, yeah, Civil War, and then Civil Rights Movement. So those are the 3 ones I've been reading about. Yeah, this is interesting for me because like I love like I really find it interesting to like dive into this era of American history that like, although it's to some extent familiar, is still like removed enough from the way things are now that like it feels like a whole new world for me to like learn about politics and learn how things were and whatnot. I'm sure there's some creative liberties taken here, as with any film, but I just think Spielberg did such a good job with this one. I think he has a real knack for historical dramas. He and his like team, especially, was this Kaminsky who shot this? Let me see.
It has the Kaminsky touch, which is the gray but gray muted color palette.
Yeah, it has Kaminsky's touch, which is like Brandon said, kind of a little bit desaturated, especially in this one. But dude, nonetheless, like Giannis and whoever his production designer was across many of his films have always been really impressive. Spielberg has such a knack for navigating space and scenes and creating depth in his frames without kind of drawing us away from the drama of the characters, which I think which works so well for a character-centric drama such as Lincoln. Yeah, I haven't revisited this movie in years, but I do remember quite liking it. But yeah, and I'm sure like even with the added context of knowing a bit more about the history now, I'm sure this movie would benefit on a rewatch. Ethan, you gave this movie 3.5. Explain yourself.
Yeah. So I watched Lincoln. In 2019, my parents and we went on a big camping trip, and we just got a new trailer, and we decided to bring a TV with us, and we decided the only movies we would watch are Spielberg movies, and I wanted to watch a shitload of Spielberg movies every night because I was I was way behind in his filmography. So we watched Duel, Sugarland Express, Munich, Bridge of Spies, Always, Catch Me If You Can, and then Lincoln and Saving Private Ryan. Those are the 8 films that we watched on this 8-day camping trip. And I gotta say, Lincoln was okay. I think Spielberg was juggling with too much with this movie. I think there's a lot of storylines going on here that I think could have just been their own movie. Like he could have just dedicated a whole movie to some other storylines that were going on in this movie, which I felt its runtime immensely. But I did love Daniel Day-Lewis. That dude, I think this is his most transformative role, I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think I can feel Daniel Day-Lewis in his other performances, like, There Will Be Blood and Phantom Thread.
Gangs of New York.
Like Gangs of New York, Daniel Day-Lewis, and There Will Be Blood, Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, you can tell those are like
same
the same
guy. Yeah.
But Lincoln, no, that's a whole other bloke. One thing I also hated Lincoln's kid. I thought he was the worst part of the movie. I thought he was so annoying. Hated him.
Ethan hates children. He hates child actors.
Listen, if you don't got it, just give up. You don't have it.
That's so
you're
funny.
Such a bitch.
No, it's true. Ethan is very hard to please in terms of child performances. The only not even just children, like teenagers. Like he rarely praises them and doesn't grade them on a curve, which I respect, but I disagree with, frankly, because
it takes me out of the movie. I don't care if they're younger and they have less experience. I'm sorry, it takes me out of the movie.
I just find it hard. I think you just go way too hard on child actors, if I'm being honest.
Fuck them kids. For real, fuck them kids. Get better. You should have been an actor earlier. Get more under your belt.
Oh my God.
Fuck them kids. He's awful in this movie.
I don't
care.
So.
You're being easy on the kids.
No.
Yeah.
I know a bad child actor when I see it.
Yeah, and he's in this
I've seen the main event.
The main event.
Yeah, but that kid's been acting for like a day. This kid's been acting for like 2 weeks in Lincoln. Same breed. Same bring a kid. Not good. Not great. But yeah, it's an okay movie. It's very much middle of the pack for me. Just think it's okay. All right, cool. Lincoln, Chris, what about you?
All right, my next pick.
All
right. All right, I'm going with my historical drama pick. It's the obvious one, the elephant in the room, that is Schindler's List.
And we got another double stack, ladies and
there
gentlemen.
There it is.
Another one.
I had a feeling someone would pick Schindler's
Ethan's never going to present a movie this episode.
Oh, I absolutely will at the end. I don't think you guys pick those things. Chris hasn't seen it. I don't think Brand loves this one, so I'm going to pick it.
Okay. Schindler's List, 1993. Same year, mind you, as the release of Jurassic Park. That was a legendary year for Spielberg. That was unbelievable that guy was able to turn out 2 masterpieces in 1 year. That is
Yeah.
almost completely unheard of. Okay, so anyone who doesn't know what Schindler's List is about, it tells the story of Oskar Schindler, uh, who is a businessman in during World War II, who saves thousands of Jewish lives in his factory. I don't want to say more than that because this movie is fucking amazing. It's so riveting from start to finish. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I've never been the biggest fan of Liam Neeson as a dramatic actor.
Yeah,
He's
I
been
agree.
all right. I've never had really a problem with him. I think he's like, I love his voice. I think he's great for voice acting. I think like him as like Aslan in Narnia. That shit gets me so hype. But like as far as like like say his roles in the Batman, the Nolan Batman films, or say in Star Wars or whatever, or like what have you. Like it's always been kind of like okay, like good job, Liam. Like, and I'm not a big fan of Taken. I feel like that's just I don't know. Most people don't like. Do a lot of people like Taken? I don't know.
I
But
haven't seen
first
Taken,
one.
surprisingly.
but anyway, Liam Neeson is fucking amazing in this movie. He plays Schindler absolutely perfectly. There are so many scenes throughout this movie that are just so gut wrenching to watch because it's a movie that does such a great job of like articulating the like the tragedy of the Holocaust and what the Jewish community had to go through in that time. There are scenes like, for example, there's this one scene where they're assessing whether or not this person can how fast a person can make hinges in a factory, which is like that sounds boring as hell as a concept, but the way that not only Spielberg executes his editing and like his directing in general, it makes every scene where we see any level of tension going on just so ground shaking to watch and so emotionally painful to behold. The bit that gets me all the time is the little girl in the is it red dress or shoes? I forget.
Dress.
Dress.
Shoes is Wizard of Oz.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. Schindler's List is such a quintessential piece of Spielberg's filmography. It's honestly, I think if I really had to put my money on it, this is his greatest accomplishment as a singular movie. For me, I think this is his greatest work. But that's just my opinion. You guys both, I think, really like Schindler's List as well. Why don't you guys tell me how you feel about it?
Well, since we double stacked, I agree that I think this is one of his most quintessential films, and I feel like it is insanely hard to argue. I think this film is even more personal than the Fabelmans. I'd go out there and say that like
yeah, in a way I can kind of see that. Yeah.
While the Fabelmans literally tells the story of Spielberg's life, I feel like this movie for Spielberg is, you can tell that his Jewish identity is so important to him, and you see that so many times throughout his filmography. But it all comes together here where he, there's the stories that where like Spielberg would like just break down on set while he was making this movie or writing the script, and I don't blame him. This film's notorious for being like one of the saddest movies ever made. Everyone's like, oh, I don't want to watch that movie, it's so sad, where I'm like, yeah, it's sad, and it takes place during one of the darkest, probably the darkest moment in human history. But in that way, it's also like the way he expresses the humanity of Oskar Schindler and of the other characters in this movie. It makes it one of the most beautiful things I think ever made. About just, humanity persisting and overcoming even the worst. How to still be a decent human being when when everyone around you and your peers aren't, it's the power of knowing what the right thing to do is and sticking to it no matter what. And yeah, it's just, it's these universal givens that should be givens that not very many people think are givens, and then that leads to events that happen in this movie, there is a scene in this movie that I don't want to spoil that is just one of the most horrific scenes in a movie ever, this is one of the more horrific sequences. You know, when you're just, I think I think all I need to say is like the handheld camera, and you're following characters through. And there's no score at anything. You're literally placed into this moment, into one of the scariest moments in human history, and I I am just floored that a director like that could do that. I think this is a perfect film, and absolutely one of the biggest milestones, if not the biggest milestone of this director's career. Brandon.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't pick this movie, and it is my favorite Spielberg movie, always has been since I watched it, is I knew you guys were going to pick it, and I didn't want to get a triple stack. I wasn't sure I was going to get a double stack this episode, but the terminal really came through. And I also was thinking, I really thought if I wanted to choose my historical pick for Lincoln, and I felt this was too similar. Not in regards to themes, but in regards to construction. And what Spielberg is really good at here is grounding the reviewer in realism. And like you said, Ethan, it's a very personal film to him because he is a Jewish filmmaker. And the ending of the film is really powerful. It's one of the first films to make me cry. I remember they used to do classics showing in theaters at my local Cinemark back home. So it was like $5, and nobody went to see them, And still, like, I think the only classic films in Arizona that I ever saw with an audience were the 1970s Superman movie and Breakfast Club. Every other classic film that I visited, like maybe 5 people in the theater. Like that goes for E.T., Back to the Future, and Schindler's List. And that's crazy to me. Because you look at like this movie, it's like a masterpiece in terms of performance and direction. It is the most sorrowful film I've ever watched. And whenever I told people, oh, it's my favorite Spielberg, they kind of like were offended when I was like in teenager. They were like, this is so sad and awful. I'm like, but that's kind of the point. And he nails it. Yeah. Not many directors can come out with one of the best blockbusters of all time and one of the best dramas of all time in the same year. And Spielberg did it. They're actually like my 2 favorite Spielberg movies, which is crazy. But yeah, it's a terrific choice.
Can you imagine what a stressful year it must have been prior to the release of this movie for him?
And both are very visual heavy. Like he had to color one movie. You gotta
think about these movies, like how you convey it. Like you can't just slap the camera wherever you want with these movies.
Because Jurassic Park is hella innovative for visual effects reasons, but also because it's like they didn't really do dinosaurs back in the day unless they were stop motion. And then this movie is like, it's impeccably somber. And they had to color it in a certain way because black and white is hard to do. Contrasting an image like that and planning for that is hard to do.
Because you don't see it in black and white. The only
no,
way
you see it in color.
Black and white is just through your camera.
And it's a film. It was shot on film. This was before digital, so it's not like they could layer like a black and white over it,
Yeah.
So they had to be really cautious about it, but color has so much meaning in this movie, and you can't just, like you said, you can't just slapdash a movie about the Holocaust like that. So it's crazy. This is the only reason where I definitely think he belongs in the discussion for greatest filmmaker of all time.
Yeah.
Because I don't agree often with that sentiment, but having back-to-back films like that, especially masterpieces, is crazy.
It is pretty crazy. Pretty clutch, I must say. All right, final round here. Let's get into it. Brandon, what's your last Spielberg?
All right, another pick. Nobody's gonna choose this movie, and that's okay. It's just a personal favorite of mine, and it's very different from every film that he's ever made up until 2018. I'm picking 2011's The Adventures of Tintin.
Double spat. Are you kidding me?
Are you really kidding? No way.
No, fuck you. I didn't pick this movie.
Okay. God damn.
Oh my god, The Adventures of Tintin.
Okay, this movie is so nostalgic for me as a kid because I remember going to see this movie. I was like, Grandma, I really want to see this movie, Adventures of Tintin. She's like, okay. We went to like the Dollar Theater in the mall to watch this movie. And we sat like middle towards the back, but I was engrossed from start to finish because this is the first and I believe only time that they've ever used motion capture for film characters for the whole movie, and I'm not talking Avatar, in a way that works. Because it doesn't feel like it's Uncanny Valley. It feels like it's a strongly animated movie that adheres to the principal animation styling of the original source material. And I love the story. I love that it's like a little PG-13 sort of animated movie for adults and for kids. Like, it doesn't cater to one or the other. And it looks fantastic. The action and adventure is rollicking. It's funny. It's heartwarming. And I'm really engaged with it. I really love adventure movies like this, and I wish we got more. I know Peter Jackson and Spielberg are busy, but I know they want to do another one. So this movie just really works for me. And whenever I think of it, I'm like, it's super highly stylized, but it doesn't feel like a Spielberg movie. But it's also one that often gets swept under the rug in comparison to all the other films that he did in the 2010s, I feel like. Because you have his historical films that stand out more. Even the BFG, just because of how mediocre it is, stands out. You know, but this movie, I understand a lot of people are just going to say it's a solid, good movie, like 3.5. But for me, I think it deserves some more recognition, if I'm being honest.
I am enamored that you only picked movies that Spielberg put out in the 21st century.
I'm not a big fan of his 70s work. His 80s work is mixed bag at best. A lot of his worst movies come from the 80s. And the 90s, I was going to pick Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan.
Why not Jurassic Park?
Because it's too obvious.
But we're talking about the quintessential.
I wanted to have some variety. In all honesty, you guys could have, I don't know. You could have picked something.
I did The Terminal, and you picked it.
I didn't know that. I also thought Jurassic Park would be taken on this list. Honestly, I thought it was going to get talked about before Jaws or another film from the 1970s, which I'm surprised was not picked. Maybe it still will be. I don't know, but
yeah, there's still 2 more movies left, buddy. Don't go counting your chickens yet. Yeah. But anyways, that just blows my mind that to capture an entire director's career, you only picked the 21st century. Anyways, Tintin. I love the Tintin comics. We read it a lot in my French class in middle school. And I saw this movie. I didn't even know it was a Spielberg movie when I first saw it. I saw it in theaters, I remember. And I was like, oh, that was an okay movie, you know? And then years later, I was like, wait, that was Spielberg and Peter Jackson? And I wasn't, like, all over it. So that makes me believe that I have to maybe revisit it, you know? I kind of want to see how the animation has improved. This is his only animated film, which is crazy. But it's not entirely animated because it's motion capture animated. Which is still animation in my book, you know, it's like rotoscope. So I want to see how that has aged, you know? What is the eyes of a person in 2022 think of the Adventures of Tintin? Very much in his style, these books. Yeah, I honestly don't remember much about it. I just remember Tintin looking a little bit creepy. I remember he looked creepy himself, but Andy Serkis' character I thought was great. I think he's the highlight of the movie. As what's his name? Captain Haddock. Yeah, that's right. As the drunken captain. Yeah, I gotta rewatch it. That's one I gotta revisit. Chris, what do you think about Tintin?
All right, I've not seen this movie since it came out. Literally, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what to say about this movie. I don't even think I freaking remember it at all. Tintin used to be a cartoon strip, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was French comic books.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like from the little that I do remember, I remember it being a really fun and engaging like adventure film, which is always really nice. I feel like adventure films are very rare. We've talked about this before. Adventure films are becoming a dying breed in the industry. So it's nice to have something like that. I also remember this movie having a lot of really interesting transitions between scenes, like a lot of like those isn't there a shot of like them rowing a boat and then it turns into a puddle and they're walking down the street suddenly.
It's
Does that
so
ring a
good.
bell?
Yes.
Those are always fun. I like seeing those in movies just because it's like, oh, that like a nice. They didn't have to do that, but they did because movies. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have much to say about this movie. I trust that it's good, but frankly, I haven't seen it since it released. So, but it's Spielberg. Typically, I am at least okay with a movie he puts out. He's never really let me down. So, good job.
Alrighty. Well, Chris, you're up next with your film.
All right. I am picking a very contemporary Spielberg film. It's a movie that came out last year. I'm picking West Side Story.
Oh.
Now, I know that this is a remake of, well, another adaptation actually of the original source material, which is the play, which is also just an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, this West Side Story has been done a billion times, and like that whole story. The Romeo and Juliet story has been done a billion times by billions of storytellers. So, but what for me works so well about how Spielberg navigates this is that there's something so Hollywood golden age about the way that I see this movie. Like everything from its visual style to just like the way in which the sweeping camera work and just like the colors, the vibrancy, the love for the craft that this film so like unapologetically relishes in is really infectious for me because I love seeing a movie that knows that it's a movie and enjoys it. And like I think Spielberg did such a great job of giving us a modern version of this story. And I mean, Ansel Elgort aside, like the cast is fantastic in this movie. I think Ansel actually is decent enough as Tony, but like, Tony is not the most deep character in the world, at least in my opinion. So like, I feel like any white boy could have played him. But yeah, I think this was great. Rachel Zegler does a great job as well. Ariana, am I pronouncing that right? Ariana DeBose is my favorite of the bunch, but I also have a soft spot in my heart for Mike Feist, who is just so much fun as Riff in the Sharks Jets or is it Sharks? I don't know. But yeah, West Side Story is so much fun. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I know some people have their qualms with it and like, don't see it as anything all that interesting considering that, we've seen the West Side Story thing been done before, but I felt this rush of love for the craft in this movie, which really comes to a head when I saw Fabelmans a week ago, because I can feel the dedication and like the love for the craft that Spielberg has, and he exemplifies that really well here. There's very little for me to pick at here in terms of negatives. A lot of the negatives that I would have with this movie come very much from the original source material. Like side characters I wish were developed more, and there's some stuff here that I just wish was like handled with a little bit more of a modern twist, because like, you can predict this movie from the second it starts. But the way it executes it, I think is really fun. I think they handled it really well. Yeah, I have a blast with this movie. I really enjoy it, and I think it's going to stand the test of time personally. But I wonder what you guys have to say about West Side Story.
I'm probably the least warm on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay. So this is someone who hasn't seen the original West Side Story, so I had no source of comparison. I just thought it was okay. Certainly, as someone who hasn't seen the original West Side Story, I can understand that original. There's some colorism when it comes to casting, and that which Spielberg corrects in this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is good. But I still think, even though it takes place, in a certain time period, I still think it still feels a little dated in some aspects, and I think Ansel Elgort, it's weird, like once he was like outed for all this stuff, he like became a really bad actor. And like
he got lazy.
He got lazy. Like even when like, I don't know, like even if this stuff didn't happen to him, I would still say like, wow, like he was not great in this movie. You know, I thought he was so stale as Tony. I think he does a really great job of the dance sequences. I think this might be unpopular, probably is, but I don't like how this is weird because it's based on a play. I don't like how it feels like it's a play, like in terms of like how shots are staged. I know Brandon just rolled his eyes.
It's very what's the word? Like you can feel like the floor,
like the production
three
design.
walls.
I can
The three
feel like
walls,
every scene
yeah.
is a box. Yeah, you know, every scene is a box. Every set, and stop rolling your eyes. Like I want this to be a movie. I want to be immersed in a story. You know what I mean? Like,
that's so lame.
it's not lame. It's just like, I don't know. It's not for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck this guy. Fuck this guy. You talk. I'm done talking.
I really like this movie. It's better than the original. I think he nailed it on the head in terms of reversing the colorist problems with the movie. I also think it's more dynamic. Joey and I talked a lot about that after we watched it together. We were like, the musical numbers are like, they have more movement to them. We have more investment in the characters because of Spielberg's adhesion to like developing them first rather than just throwing us into the stereotypical Bronx white Irish New Yorker versus Hispanic Puerto Rican immigrant dichotomy. I think Rachel Zegler's great in the movie. I actually think Ansel Elgort does a good job. I don't think he's really that bad in this, and I think the allegations, although very
I
true,
think they're wrong. I thought that's what you were gonna go on to say. I'm like,
watch it.
no, guys, they're true, and it's messed up because there's
They're
screenshots.
true.
There's
You're like,
screenshots
I know,
of-
I was there.
Listen, shut the fuck up, Ethan. Okay. I think while we have evidence that it happened and that he's very much a predator, I think he was fine in the movie, and I think a lot of people just that clouds their judgment of the performance because that is what is inane to humans when they judge an artistic product. They can't help separate the person from their actions. Because honestly, in my eyes, he gives like the same level of performance that he did in Baby Driver, and people praise him for that movie all the time. So yeah, I think he was fine in this, and I don't get the hate. I do think the movie isn't perfect. I think structurally it has issues, like tonally. Like for example, the jumping between Maria singing I Feel So Pretty and the rumble feels very awkward tonally. Like it feels like it should have came before that and been split into two scenes because it's like it jumps backwards. And I know that's kind of the structuring of the original play. I mean Romeo and Juliet in that 5-act structure sense, but I don't think that works. And I feel like as a filmmaker, you could have fixed that up a little bit to make it more tonally conjunctive. Because otherwise you have this really dark scene where Tony kills Riff. Or not, yeah. No, he doesn't kill Riff. He kills
he kills Bernardo.
Bernardo, and then Bernardo kills Riff. And that is so like devastating. And then it's like, I feel so pretty. And you're like, oh, I don't need that injection of joy right now. It's just devastating.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah.
So I think there are problems with the movie, but I think Spielberg did a better job at communicating those things. I think Ariana DeBose is good in this movie. Did she deserve the Academy Award? No. I think Ingenue Ellis for King Richard was better, but very good role. Anita's a very good role. I just think there should be more of her character in the movie if she's going to get an Academy Award. Even if she's a supporter, she's like in 3 big scenes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the movie a lot. I'm with you, Chris.
Well, there you go, guys. That's my final pick.
Alrighty, good pick. We're gonna end off with me now. Because we double stacked with the Terminal, we're actually doing this in the reverse order that I wanted. I was going to start with this movie, but I guess I'm ending with it because I wanted to go in chronological order. So I'm taking... I had to pick one of Spielberg's earlier films because unlike Brandon, I think my favorite era of Spielberg is the early 80s and late 70s. this is one of my favorite films of all time. I had to pick it. Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I knew you'd pick this one.
I think that's it's the perfect balance between Spielberg as a humanist director and a cinematic, fantastical and imaginative director that he's been just defined as, you know? In a time where films about first contact and aliens leading up to this film have all been about seeing the outsiders as the enemy and as us needing to defend ourselves during like a Cold War era, during a post-war era, you know, aliens were used as a device to unite us against an enemy, you know, which is what, you know, look at War of the Worlds, look at, you know, This Island Earth. I think you can see it in just any other, like, alien science fiction film, probably besides The Day the Earth Stood Still. That one's an outlier within the alien genre, you know? I mean, Invaders from Mars, that was a popular one that came out. And that was also remade by Tobe Hooper of Poltergeist, or maybe not Poltergeist. But I think Spielberg really redefined how we looked at aliens with Close Encounter of the Third Kind, where he realized that he taught us that when encountering the unknown, we shouldn't encounter it with fear, but rather curiosity to connect, you know? This movie talks about language. You know, we are able to connect to these aliens through things that are concrete within our universe, math and sound, which is music, you know? So that's why the duh, 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 duh. That's was such a genius thing for Spielberg to think of. Like, that's how we would communicate with aliens, because music is a universal device, notes and tone, and math, because they send out coordinates to each other, you know? That's something that's universal. And it also, this film, while it intersects his humanism with his imagination, it also brings in his own personal life as, you know, a child of a divorced home. We see a lot of interpersonal family drama in here, you know, with Richard Dreyfuss's character, and he just pulled very real scenes that now, after seeing The Fabelmans, looking at Richard Dreyfuss's character in Close Encounters, like, that was his mom, you know? Like, I could tell that he pulled a lot of inspiration from his mom and that character as someone who did believe, who did have this imagination, who was, like, dealing with such a realist character like his dad, who in this case is, you know, Richard Dreyfuss's wife. That dynamic is, now it's more clear than ever, which makes it honestly an even more satisfying and personal experience. And I mean, just like, this movie still kind of scares the daylights out of me. You all know how I feel about Little Gray Men. The scene where you know, where Toby's getting kidnapped, just like the aliens unscrewing the vents and the lights, the stars, the clouds, and, you know, the scene where Richard Dreyfuss is getting abducted for the first time, where it comes back from the rear and then it goes up, you know? It's so great.
Actually,
and then the
really
ending,
good.
of course, is just one of my favorite endings in film of all time. A true ending about connection, universal connection, and being good. Such a good film. Quintessential alien film. That I think that nothing will ever surpass that as the alien movie for me. And that's why Close Encounters is such a good film. Chris, you haven't seen this film, right? Did I just, like... Is he okay? Is he frozen?
I think he's frozen. Dude has having trouble today with his
I'm
computer.
like, damn. I
He's
must
really
have been
sad.
saying a bunch of bullshit.
He's like,
he
this
is
guy.
unfazed. Wait,
He's
I gotta add this to the This has been Chris's face the entire time I've been saying this feel about Close Encounters, everybody. I'm gonna put it up on screen.
Oh, it's funny.
Holy
He
fuck.
looks so sad.
I know.
Oh, he's gone.
His wife
And
probably
he's
went
gone.
out.
Yeah.
All right, while he's troubleshooting that, Brandon, let's talk about Close Encounters because I know he hasn't seen this movie. So let's have a discussion about this.
When you
'Cause
were
I know you
describing
don't love it.
I don't love
you
it.
love Jurassic Park 2 more than this movie, and the movie AI, which I hate that movie. I don't understand.
Hey, okay, listen. I don't love AI. I like AI a lot, and I get a lot out of Jurassic World: The Lost or Jurassic Park: The Lost World, just because I have great nostalgia for watching that movie. I remember that was one of the few movies to really freak me out as a kid, seeing the Tyrannosaurus Rex rampage through suburbia. And there he is, folks.
Oh, no, there he's not.
He's not actually here. It's an empty chair where he once
fuck?
sat.
How did he get
This is actually quite insane.
I'm putting that in the. I'm putting that thing too. He just doesn't. He was abducted, Brandon. It's just like Close Encounters. There he is.
Oh, he is.
He's back. Hey, he's
Hello,
back.
Sorry.
We're
The
keeping
internet
this-
went out
we
and I
gotta
went to
keep
go
this
talk
in
to
there.
Luke about it because Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
You're back. All right. I talked about Close Encounters. Now Brandon's talking about Close Encounters, and you can talk about it after him. Brandon, continue.
Okay.
Sorry.
I would say if I rewatch this movie in a theater, I would say it probably would jump quite a bit because as you were describing the scenes, I'm like, there are so many good scenes in this movie, and I don't know quite why I don't connect with it more than most people because I do like the science fiction stuff with artificial intelligence very much being like a Pinocchio story, just very crazy and out there. Like I respect the swing. Joey and I were talking about it the other night, how I respect movies that take big swings and are very ambitious, even if those swings don't always pay off. Now, sometimes you get a movie like Tenet that takes too big of a swing for me, and I'm like, you tried too hard, and now it falls flat on its face. But I think at least with AI, there's a vision there, and it's very nice to see like a Kubrick-Spielberg swing. Whereas with Close Encounters, like I just never connected to the personal story, and it is very bare bones. But as someone who loves a movie like The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is, I would say, pretty bare bones science fiction, in comparison to what people would expect, I think this is along the same lines that I really need to rewatch and pick up on the personal drama because this was like one of the first Spielberg movies I ever watched. And I remember being underwhelmed by it because I was like, alien movie, gonna be cool, right? And I didn't really think it was. But like you said, there's the scene, the initial abduction scene. There's the scene with the vent and the UFO flying outside the house with the kid throwing open the door. Yeah. There's the excellent potato scene with the mashed potato mountain.
And then when he makes the actual mountain his house, and that's,
and then like the last scene is pretty terrific, and honestly, probably why I rated the film so highly. I probably would have rated it lower without that ending, if I'm being honest, because there is something beautiful about that, and in all honesty, like it's so refreshing to see a movie with aliens portrayed as they are in this film.
Yeah.
And I could really see the inklings and the start of E.T. there. So, yeah.
Brandon, I highly suggest that you rewatch this film after you see The Fabelmans.
And I will.
Because I think you can really see,
he kind of flipped roles from what it sounds like. He flipped roles
because, his mom was really the sporadic dreamer, that Richard Dreyfuss is, you know? And it's so interesting to see that. Chris, you have not seen Close Encounters, have you?
No, I have not. I actually used to get this movie confused with Poltergeist a lot. I don't know why.
Weird. I mean, there is a shot in there. The shot of the kid.
Okay, I think that was it. Because that shot stuck with me because I've seen that before. But I don't know. I've just never seen this movie before. I know it's up there for you, Ethan. But other than that, I don't really know much about this movie. But it's on the list. It's just this list is getting long, as it always will be. But yeah.
Well, I suggest it goes to the top of that list, personally. Alrighty. Well, there are all of our Spielberg movies. Pretty crazy movies that we left out of this discussion. Do we want to shout some out right now?
Sure.
For me, I would say any Indiana Jones movie, really. We didn't even talk about
Jurassic.
Indiana Jones, his most successful franchise. Jurassic Park.
Catch Me If You Can.
Saving Private Ryan. Catch Me If You Can. I would also like to shout out Duel, one of his first films, which is a great film.
We mentioned it
Color
briefly,
Purple.
but we never like really talked about it. I really like War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds, amazing. Color Purple, I just watched today for the first time. Fantastic film, great film.
Munich.
Is Minority Report
Munich.
good? I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, Minority Report is good. The
I
ending
think it's
is
good,
the
not
worst
great.
part. The ending is the worst part. Amistad is really good. I stand by it. Empire of the Sun, cute.
Here's one that will stand by is really good. That's one of his newer films, The Post. I think The Post
Yeah.
is a great film.
I
I really
agree.
like The Post.
I agree. We'll talk about it someday.
Sugarland Express, I think, is good.
No.
No? Okay.
That movie's mad.
Movies that suck, always. Fuck that movie.
1941.
AI, fuck that movie.
No.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, not a great movie. Lost
Yeah.
World, not a great movie.
Mm.
Temple of Doom, I might need to rewatch, but I didn't like it when I watched it as a kid. I always skipped that one and just went to Raiders.
Joey and I
Last Crusade.
Joey and I tried to watch Temple of Doom one night when I was at his place. It was before they moved out of Anavia.
Yeah.
And we were trying to watch it on Paramount Plus, and we started watching it, and the audio was so poorly mixed. Like, the sound effects were like, boom, 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 boom. And then the audio was like...
Was that a Paramount Plus thing? I don't remember.
I don't know, but it was just... It was awful, so we turned it off like 5 minutes in, and we started watching Monsters University.
That's a good movie.
Very, very good movie.
Ready Player One, I liked, but
movie.
now his like... The more
I
I think
love
about it, the more I don't like.
Yeah, same. Those are the big ones.
It was a 3.5 star when I first watched it, but now it's like a low 3 for me. I don't know.
As somebody who's seen all of his movies, his worst 2 movies are 1941 and Always. And War Horse. War Horse sucks. Yeah, I love historical
I kind of
dramas.
want to see War Horse just because War Horse. I always call it War Horse. Just because I've always memed on it ever since I saw the trailers for it. I didn't even know it was a Spielberg movie when I first saw the trailers for it. I was like, this movie looks so dumb. It's like, they say dang horse, War Horse.
Also, Twilight Zone, his segment is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a segment in that movie. It was okay.
But it's not entirely his movie.
No.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Let's run down our picks and let's get to this final stack. So, Brandon, you want to go off with your movies? Your 21st century Spielberg movies?
Yeah, I did The Terminal, Lincoln, and The Adventures of Tintin.
Chris?
I did Jaws, Schindler's List, and West Side Story.
And I did The Terminal, Schindler's List, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. All right,
Okay,
so
I think
guess what, guys? We just got to pick one movie. We already
And it's
know
going to
two
be
of them.
Close Encounters.
You think so?
I think we go with Ethan's stack here. I'm not
Really?
lying. I think Ethan nailed it.
I would go with that or Jaws, because I think we just need one early.
I personally think Close Encounters is better than Jaws, but
Yeah.
I'm willing to debate this if need be.
I'm indifferent on it. I've never seen Close Encounters, but I trust both of your opinions, so I'll go with it. Yeah, but I mean,
I'll say this.
I do like Jaws.
Here's how I'll help you be a bit more assured, Chris. I feel like Close Encounters is a film that intersects what I said earlier, intersects more of his his ideologies and themes that he goes by in most of his filmography. Sort of he's a humanist director, he's an imaginative director, and he's a director who likes to talk about broken families,
Mhm.
and that's all in this movie. Jaws, I think we can use Jaws for a future stack. That there's so much potential for Jaws that I feel like we can talk about it again. We have talked about it, and I feel like we will talk about it again.
Yeah.
because I think it is such a great film.
Yeah, I can rock with that.
And
All
Close
right.
Encounters is like one of his few genre films that from his early days. I think if we wouldn't pick E.T., I think we would have to pick Close Encounters. Because I wouldn't want to pick his like modern science fiction movies, because Ready Player One doesn't really feel like classic Spielberg. It feels like an homage to classic Spielberg. And then Minority Report and Artificial Intelligence don't really have the same allure as E.T. or Close Encounters or even Jurassic Park. So that's why I think we should go with that.
I guess I won Stacked. I did it!
Oh, yeah.
It took me 95 episodes, but I won Stacked!
Is this technically your first ace?
Is this anybody's first ace?
I've had an ace once, but it was because of Studio Ghibli.
I think it hinges on...
It hinges on double stacks.
Yeah, and also it hinges on me picking The Terminal out of nowhere.
Alright, what would you have picked if you didn't pick The Terminal?
Probably Jurassic Park, but I feel like it was like a basic pick. I was seriously debating Schindler's List. That was like my third pick, but it was too similar to Lincoln. We haven't talked about Lincoln yet. And also, I wanted to mention films we haven't really talked on the podcast a lot about. And I knew Schindler's List would be on here, so...
Yeah.
And it's my favorite, so I'm not complaining, like, by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's a great film, so...
Oh, hell yeah. I feel like $1 million right now.
You feel like the Powerball winner.
I do. I feel like the Powerball winner. I'm going to spend all my Spielberg Powerball winnings on watching more Spielberg movies. I don't know.
You got to catch up, bro.
Well, because these are all my movies, I say we go in chronological order because we're trying to encapsulate this guy's filmography. I think it's good to just take it by chronological. What do you guys say?
Yeah, and we wrap with a good high note.
Yeah, I don't really want to end it with Schindler's List, you know. Yeah, and The Terminal is like it's a nice light movie, you know. It's lighter than Close Encounters, so it lightens the punch that Schindler's List is. So I think that's how we do it. Alrighty, this is Stack's list of the most quintessential Spielberg movies, starting with his 1977, dip into genre filmmaking. Jaws is a horror film, that's a genre film, but this is really his most, when he gets into science fiction, and that's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, a film that shows Spielberg as a really humanist director. I keep saying this, humanist, imaginative, personal director who likes to draw from his own personal life growing up in a broken home. He's a master at showing about what that's like. It's a movie about dreamers, there's a reason why the Pinocchio When You Wish Upon a Star plays. It's because it's a movie about believing. It's about believing and connecting and dreaming that there is something out there. It's a beautiful film. I think is the quintessential movie about aliens and about aliens contacting humans. I don't think there can be any other film that could ever top that. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, a strong start to, a strong start in the 70s to like what Spielberg would become. Brandon, you want to take over for our second film list, Phil?
No, I don't.
I think you should do it. Oh, no, you don't. Why would you do that? Chris, I'm
Why
sorry.
would I do that?
I don't know.
All right.
Shut up, Brandon. Chris, you talk.
All right, our next film is Spielberg's 1993 historical drama, Schindler's List, an incredibly heart-wrenching film detailing the suffering of the Jewish community throughout World War II and specifically the Holocaust, but also tells a story about hope and the ability to persevere through tragedy and stand up for what is right, no matter the odds. Incredibly heart-wrenching film. You gotta see it. Schindler's List.
Gotta see it. Brandon, now you say those magic words. Say them.
And our last film. Woo! The Terminal. A quintessential post 9/11 movie as well as Spielberg movie. It's a great lighthearted story that I feel like anybody could watch and say, this was pretty good. Like, it's a feel-good watch. And honestly, that's all you need sometimes. It really captures Spielberg's ability to go very low stakes and still make a personal and affecting story, even if it is a little melodramatic sometimes.
Well, there you have it, everybody. That's our Spielberg list.
Hell yeah.
I did it.
Hell yeah.
I won. Stacked. We can end the show. I won!